Hello and welcome to Darts with Jack, which is this podcast, and I hope that you are listening from either YouTube or Spotify, depending on whether I can get it out on both platforms. And so this podcast is hopefully going to be weekly, and it's just going to talk about all of the biggest darts stories from the week. So please follow or subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to my YouTube. I'll hopefully leave my socials in the description, and please feel free to give them a follow. So what is this podcast going to entail this week? It is going to entail the Premier League Night 1 in Cardiff and looking ahead to the Masters of this weekend. Right, so it was Peter Wright 3, Rob Cross 6 in the first game of the Premier League Night 1 with an 83.78 average for Wright and a 93.65 for Cross. Gutted for Wright. Obviously, there was so much controversy around him being in the Premier League, and it kind of showed, obviously. I'm gutted for Wright, I can't lie. Obviously, he hit that big fat 12 in his first 3 darts, and everyone, Twitter especially, just took hold of it, But he did not play well, and I was gutted for him. We can't take that away from Rob Cross's performance, though. In Price's home Premier League night, obviously in Cardiff, it was an 100 average, which beat Aspinall 6-4 with near 89 average for Aspinall himself. Aspinall was very unlucky in this game, but with the crowd behind Price, it was always going to be a tough game for him. Now, with MVG 5, Smith 6, it was a 97 average for MVG and a 94 average for Michael Smith, 5 180s for MVG. He was completely relentless in this game, there was no doubt about it, but Smith took it in the deciding leg, played really well. I'm going to touch on Michael Smith as well more at the end of this section of the podcast. Now, in the big game of the night, it was a repeat of the World Championship final. Obviously, Luke Littler 6, Humphreys 2. And 100 average for Littler and a 93 average for Humphreys. And the big decider in this game was the whistling, which really took hold of Luke Humphreys. He was obviously very affected by it. And personally, it's so upsetting to see a player's game, obviously on both of their technically debuts in the Premier League, gutting to see Humphreys be really put down by this whistling. Out onto the semi-finals of the Premier League Night 1 in Cardiff. It was Rob Cross 2, the Welshman, the Iceman, Gerwyn Price 6, a 5-point difference in the average, 96 for Rob Cross and 102 for Gerwyn Price. Obviously, the crowd was comfortably behind Price in this one. Rob Cross was struggling to find the trebles at one point, which hindered him. Price played really well. There's no point in taking away from that. And Michael Smith 6, Luke Littler 5 in the other semi-final. Once again, Smith's deciding leg just really took it for him. A 98 average for Smith, beating a rounded up 106 average from Littler, an almost 8-point difference. Smith was just amazing in the deciding leg. But there was a lot of whistling for Smith, even against Littler. I can't remember if it was in this game, in the final, or in the quarterfinal, But the Michael Smith was left on 150 for a 9-darter, and they whistled, and it put him off. For darts fans, that is so low. Why would you whistle on a 9-darter? You could always be the one to say, oh, I witnessed a 9-darter live. And yeah, let's now move on to the final. Right, so in the final, it was the Welshman Iceman who lost 6-2 to Michael Smith, a 91 average from Price, under average for him, played a 98 average from Michael Smith, pretty much average for Michael Smith. Smith was relentless with 5 180s again, and he played extremely well in this game. There was no coming near to him. Now, the big factor in this for me was Smith's development of his game, apparently, and in his post-match interview, which he did with Emma Payton and Wayne Mardle, he talked about how his wife told him he was playing too slowly, and he went home, and he's one of the big practices on the Pro Tour, and he practiced for relentlessly trying to smooth up that throw and throw that throw quicker, and it worked, and he won the night, obviously, so I was so happy for him. Now, the big controversy was around his move to shot dart away from Unicorn, and I'm just going to touch on why I think that move is actually beneficial for him. Obviously, the first year after he won the World Championship, when he went to shot, there was a lot of controversy, going, you've got to release new darts after, becoming the World Champion, and it has hindered him. There's no taking away from that. However, now he's had time to get used to the shot darts. He's released a few versions of them. He's really settling into them, and it's really going to help him, I think, just develop his game more. And I think he just needs to stick to a set of darts. He needs to stick and he needs to practice and he needs to be the relentless Michael Smith that we all know he can be. Now, the big question I want to pose to you in today's podcast is, do you like the Premier League format? Now, with Luke Littler joining the Premier League, this format as well, a lot of the fans on Twitter especially are going, this is an awful format. Why are we doing these mini tournaments? I'm going to provide a really unpopular opinion here. I love this format. This format sticks to me. I love the format. I get to watch some of my favourite players, 1, 2 or 3 times a night in quick fire games. However, I do think the only downfall in this, setup is that it doesn't allow players to settle into the game, which means sometimes we don't see the version of them that we would like to. But it brings so many new fans to the sport. It revitalises, it re-energises the sport for many people. So please leave a comment on YouTube or, tweet me, send me a message on Twitter, reply to me on Twitter on the links, hopefully in the description. And we'll get your opinions on that. We're now going to talk about the look ahead to the Masters. Right, so let's talk about the Masters, which probably has started by the time I release this podcast. So the first round games are Stephen Bunting versus Ross Smith, Clayton versus Ratajski, Van Dijvenbode versus Searle, Cullen versus Rock, Dobey versus Gilding, Chisnell versus Schindler, Van den Berg versus Wade, and Heta versus Clemens. So I'm just going to go through all my predictions. So, personally, I believe that Stephen Bunting will beat Ross Smith, which means he'll face Humphries in the next round. I reckon Clayton will beat Ratajski, who will then face Wright. Ooh, this is a tough one. I reckon Searle's going to beat Van Dijvenbode, who'll play Aspinall. Cullen, I'm a huge Cullen fan. I really hope Cullen wins. I'm hoping that Cullen does beat Rock and then goes to face Gurney. I am hoping... Ooh, that's a tough one. I think Dobey will beat Gilding and go to face Van Gerwen. I think... I'm going to go for a big shock. I think I'm going to say that Schindler is going to beat Chisnell to face Noppert. I think Van den Berg will beat... Oh, do I? It's a tough one. No, I'm going to go James Wade is going to beat Van den Berg. And I think that Heta will beat Clemens. Oh, I can't remember. Oh, I think I remember my picks for that one. Right, here we go. So in the second round, I reckon Humphries will beat Bunting. I think Clayton will beat Wright. Searle will beat Aspinall. Cullen will beat Gurney. Ooh, who else do I think? Van Gerwen will beat Dobey. Schindler will beat Noppert. Ooh, Michael Smith will beat Wade. And Heta will beat Cross in that one. In the quarterfinals, I reckon it will be Humphries will beat Clayton. I'm hoping I've got my picks right. I reckon Humphries will beat Clayton. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? I reckon Cullen will beat Searle. I reckon... yes, I'm going to say that Van Gerwen will beat Schindler. And I reckon that Smith will beat... Did I say Heta to beat Cross? I think I did. I'm really sorry if I didn't, but I think Smith will beat Heta. In my semis, I think that it will be... I think Humphries will beat Cullen, and I think Smith will beat Van Gerwen. And I think the final will be Humphries, Van Gerwen, and I think that I'm going to go for a Van Gerwen win in the Masters. So they are my predictions for the Masters. So they are my predictions. Now I'm just going to give a bit of background on what the Masters actually is. Is also known as the Cazoo Masters. Is held in Milton Keynes in the Marshall Arena. And it's a non-ranking PDC darts tournament which features the top 24 darts players according to the PDC Order of Merit. Now, obviously, you'll be noticing that I haven't mentioned Gerwyn Price and I mentioned Daryl Gurney. Price has pulled out for unknown reasons. I'm really sorry if there are reasons, I just don't know them currently. And it is Daryl Gurney who has took his place by the Order of Merit. Phil Taylor won the inaugural tournament, beating Adrian Lewis 10-1 in the final, absolute demolishing, and the 2023 tournament was won by Chris Dobie, which guaranteed him a place in the Premier League. Usually, I don't think it was actually confirmed, but usually it was the player who won the Masters got a place in the Premier League. Luckily, they made the Premier League start before the Masters to avoid that this year. So, Joe Cullen won it in 2022, Clayton in 2021. I still would love Joe Cullen to win because I'm a huge Joe Cullen fan. But hey, he's been playing good darts, so I'm just going to hope that happens. Now, the format of the Masters is quite quick fire. There's a $275,000 prize fund. It's a leg format. And yeah, that is the Masters rundown for all of you. So thank you for listening to the inaugural Darts with Jack podcast on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you are hearing it. Now please, obviously I'm just currently recapping the Premier League. Next week I'll do a Premier League recap and a Masters recap and look ahead to the tournaments. But I would love any ideas. Please comment on my YouTube or message me or tweet me on X or Twitter. And I will hopefully listen to those suggestions and get back to you. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.